right, when we last left off, we have our working yarn here on the left side, and we've just completed knitting across both of our heels, and we're ready to begin picking up the stitches along the left side of our heel flap in order to start knitting our gusset stitches. The way that I find is easiest to do this is to go ahead and take off this sock that's on the left and put it on either stitch holders. You can transfer it to waste yarn or simply to another set of needles. And so I found that to be easier to do the picking up of the heel flaps, do those separately without the complication of having to try to do it two at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer this sock off onto another set of needles and let it wait while we pick up the stitches on the heel, each side of the heel flaps on this one. All right, I've separated this one off on its own set of needles. Okay, so now I have this one free on its own needles, and I'm going to simply start picking up these chain edge stitches down the left side of the heel flap. So first I want you to just take a look, make sure that you unroll this edge. It likes to curl inward. Just make sure that you unroll it so that you can actually see those chain edges clearly. And I'm going to take my left needle here and put it under this first one just so you can see. And I want both sides, the left and the right leg of that chain edge, because I think that makes a more durable side to pick up. And I'm just going to put my right needle underneath that and knit into it. Okay, so let's do that again. If you look here on the edge, and make sure that you flip it all the way over so you can actually see what you're aiming to pick up. All right, unroll that with your, kind of hold it down. That's the one I just got, so I'm going to go for this one right here, okay? And I'm going to knit in underneath that and pick it up, all right? Now you can really, after you get away from that corner, you can start to see a little more clearly that that is the spot where you go in and under, and you knit that off, and you can see right there is the next one, in and under, both legs of that chain top. And you just carry on like that all the way down the edge. And then I'll show you what we do when we get to, what I prefer to do when we get to that corner at where we meet the instep stitches. I've picked up the stitches all the way down this heel flap edge, and now I am to the corner where it meets the instep stitches. Now, if we're not careful, you can sometimes end up with a hole here. So what I like to do is pick up an extra stitch or two. You could tuck in right there, pick up another one if you felt that was necessary. I like to use this bar between the two stitches, and I go in from the back and I just pick up that bar actually. And then I'm going to place it over on my right hand needle and kind of do a little maneuver like that so that I'm pulling this up. And then what I do is knit into it. Well, it's a little tight, but I do this so that I can actually twist the stitch. And if that's too awkward to knit into it, you can just go ahead and twist it and put it on the right hand needle. But I knit into it like that, twisting it so that I'm actually twisting that bar and creating a twisted stitch from that. That will go a long way toward helping mitigate any potential holes in this gusset corner. All right, now we want to just knit across the instep stitches, keeping in pattern. So let me show you a quick little mistake that I made. I started knitting across the instep and I didn't pull my cable through. So now I have everything on this all together. But you know what? It's not that big of a deal. I'll go ahead and pull my cable through, and then I'll go back and find my corner. So there's my Scatterby pattern, the first stitch of the chart. But then remember, we also had 2 stitches on each side that we're using to frame it with. And then here's the one I picked up. So I'm just going to gently pinch my cable and work it down and through. And that's where I'm going to pull my cable through, for my magic loop. Now, if you don't have this problem, or you're using double points, then that's great. So that's how it should have been. So when you go to watch this back and you do this, remember that the instep stitches should be separated off from the back of the heel stitches and then the gusset as well. So make sure you separate that off. And then we're going to start picking up the heel flap on the other side here. So again, I'm going to go ahead and pull this through and magic loop my way around. Again, we want to mitigate any chance of a hole. So I'm going to pick up this bar like I did before, and I'm going to knit into that while twisting it so that it doesn't leave a hole. So to do that, I'm actually going to want to pick it up from the back. See that? And kind of turn it, wrap it as if to knit, and then you can use this other needle tip. I shouldn't have pulled that all the way through. You can use that other needle tip to get a hold of it there and knit into it. There we go. Okay, so that's the one we're picking up so that we don't make a hole. Now, we've picked up this bar, and now I'm gonna pick up an extra one right here underneath this first knit edge just to make sure. Then you can see right there is my first chain edge. Okay. Now this one, it does curl, but I don't know why this side always seems a little easier to me to be able to pick them up and to see them. It always seems a little easier to see them. See, right there's the next one. And we're just going to continue on up until we get to the top of our heel flap. Now, this is a good time to remind you that the reason this is so customizable is because you can easily tell that the number of chain edge stitches that you have is obviously determined by how big you made your heel flap, and the number of stitches that we pick up is going to determine the diameter of our sock now. So you can tell that's going to determine, how many stitches we knit around and how many times we have to decrease it down to the top of the foot, or sorry, to the base of your leg, right above the ankle. So this part is what's going to be, if your heel flap is, if your heel's sitting here, this goes over the top of your foot, actually the widest part of where the tip of your ankle to the very top of your foot. And so you can tell that the longer you make this heel flap, the bigger in diameter that will be. So that can be super helpful if you have someone that has, a larger foot that you need to accommodate. So I just wanted to kind of, again, point that out. All right, go ahead and finish picking up all of these little stitches and we'll get back to the top. All right, I'm back to the top, and this was the beginning. This is the back of the heel now. And we have our little reinforcement columns. Remember our slip one, knit one pattern that we did on the bottom of the heel as well as on the back. Now, if you want to continue that, you certainly can. If you choose to do that, I would place a marker here, and I would place a marker here at this other edge, and you can carry on doing that. But remember, if you choose to continue with that, you're going to want to alternate whether you're doing a plain knitting round or the slip stitch pattern. Because remember before when we knitted our heel flap, we did the slip one, knit one all the way across, and then we purled our way back. And so now that we're knitting the round, you're not going to purl your way back. So you will need to, if you choose to do that, you will need to alternate a plain knitting round with your slip stitch round, because obviously you can't just keep slipping the same stitch up and up and up subsequent rows. So just, if you choose to do that, that's great. I'm not. I'm just going to knit across it, and then I'm going to start my gusset decreases. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is just knit straight across, and we're going to knit down to this corner right before the instep stitches. Stop when you get to 3 stitches before the end. I'm going to pause here for a moment. I'm 3 stitches before the end, and I'm about to do my first decrease on the gusset. But what I wanted to say is, this is all kind of tight because we have so many stitches mashed on this back of the heel needle now, and then you have your instep stitches here, which is fine, but you can see that is a lot of stitches. And although I do have a 40 centimeter a 40-inch cable, which I believe is almost 100, it is 100 centimeters, I think. That's pretty good size cable, but you know what? If I was going to try to do this with both of them, I think I would want to have a 60-inch cable. But you do have a couple of choices here. You can knit your first decrease round and then decide whether you want to go ahead and pick up your heel flap stitches on your other sock and then try to combine them back onto the same needle. Or if you just want to go ahead and do what I'm going to do, which is to complete the gusset decreases on both socks separately, then put them back together. Now, if you don't have two sets of needles, what you're going to want to do is go ahead and complete your gusset decreases on this first one till you're back down to your original number of cast on stitches. Then put this one on your waste yarn, or, you know, using your darning needle to thread it onto some cotton yarn or stitch holders or whatever, and then go perform the same exact procedure on your other sock. So I find that because the gusset decreases have so many more stitches that I'd really rather complete all that separately, then put my socks back together to continue knitting the leg two at a time. You do what works best for you. That's just my personal preference. So back to this. When I get down to 3 stitches toward the end, I'm just going to knit 2 together and knit 1. And that's 1 stitch decreased. Now that's a right leaning decrease. We always want our decreases to lean away from the corner or away from the join. Okay, so you knit till you have 3 at the end. Now turn your work and you're going to knit back in pattern across here. And then what do you think is next? A left leaning decrease at the beginning of the next gusset side. Okay, we're back at the corner here. We've knitted across the top of the foot stitches and we're back to this other edge. So again, we're going to now do a left leaning increase in the first 3 stitches. So just knit 1 normally. And then we're going to do our slip, slip, knit. So slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, and then go in underneath with your left needle and knit into the back loop of that. All right, now just knit normally all the way back around. Now you can use a row marker or like a beginning of the round marker if you choose. I generally don't because I can always tell, I can tell what I've done. Now during this decreasing sequence for the gussets, we're going to alternate the decrease round with a plain round. So I'm just going to continue knitting all the way around, past the back of the heel, over to the end of the needle here. When I get there, I'm going to be able to tell that I knitted 2 stitches together the last time, so I'm just going to pass that up and knit straight across and all the way around. So if you want to put a beginning of the round marker, like here at this corner, I sometimes used to do it in the middle of the back, so that you know whether you're on a decrease round or a plain round. You can certainly do that. Do what works best for you. So all we're going to do is continue doing those decreases, the decrease round alternated with a plain knitting round, until we get everything back down to our original cast on number of stitches, whatever that was for you. So for me, it was 72. I had 36 on this needle and 36 on the back needle. All right, so I'll do this for a little while and then I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, it's looking pretty good. You can see where I've been decreasing. This is the side where I do the knit 2 together, knit 1, and then I travel across the instep stitches, and then on this side is where I'm doing the knit 1 and then slip, slip, knit. So I have a little ways to go yet with the gussets. I've finished my gusset decreases now. I have decreased everything back down to where I have the original number of cast on stitches on each sock. And so I chose to keep them separate to do that, just to lessen the awkwardness and the tightness of the cable until, I could do it more easily with a 60-inch cable probably. But I cast on a lot of stitches, more than some people do. So I wanted to have the flexibility to do that. So now I put them back on. So now I'm ready to begin knitting the pattern all the way around now so that I have the pattern on the back as well. All right, so I'm going along and I'm about to start row 1 of the chart again on the back side here, and I realize row 1 is where you do the thing where you slip and bring the yarn to the front. And I thought, I better do the setup row first because I'm going to want a stitch that has that double wrap in order to pull it up, right? So if you're going to continue on the back side your Scatterby pattern and not have it just be plain, or some people have done like a 2x2 or 3x3 ribbing across the back. If you want to continue your Scatterbees, do the setup row again on the back of this so that you have enough extra, see my doubles, that you can pull up through the chart. The other thing that I chose to do was I went ahead and knitted 2 border stitches, just like we did on the front side. I did 2 border stitches on this edge and this edge, just because I thought it would make it cool, kind of have a border line down the, down this side edge, and kind of carry on this look right here. So, but you know what? You're the boss, so you do what you want. But if you are going to continue the Scatterby chart along the back side, go ahead and do that setup row first. All right, so I've knitted across the back of the socks here, and I've done that setup round. But here's the thing. This was the beginning of my round right here, and so I went across doing the setup round. But then when I get to this side and I turn my work, being careful not to tangle anything, I've already done row 4 of the chart, which is in essence kind of the same as the setup round, because we did the double wrap on the first stitch of our 4-stitch sequence. So now I'm ready to begin row 2 of the chart, even though this is not technically the beginning of my round. So what I've decided to do is change where the beginning of the round is. So if changing where the beginning of your round is, if you don't like that, or that freaks you out, or it doesn't make sense, then what you need to do then is, after you finish row 3 of your chart sequence, knit your setup round on the back side here, make this the setup round, and then continue with row 4 along this side, or again the front of your socks. Then you'll be all ready to start all over again with your chart on row 1 at the beginning of your predetermined at the beginning of the round. So if that's confusing or that doesn't make sense, drop me a comment down below and I'll see if I can explain it over again in a different way that is better for you. Now just continue knitting round and round and round, keeping in pattern until you reach the desired length for the height of the leg, or the, however tall you want the leg of your sock to be. Now, if you're getting low on yarn and you're going to knit until you run out, make sure you leave enough at the end of your balls of yarn, because you need enough to do the bind off. You need enough to sew to do the stretchy sewn bind off that I'm going to show you next time. I would say, leave a couple of meters or 5 or 6 feet of yarn left to do that. Don't cut yourself too short. All right, see you next time. Thanks for watching.